I didn't want to go to the company party. Not because I had a problem with Lauren's job, quite the opposite. I was proud of her. Genuinely. After years of her grinding through late nights and corporate ladder games, she'd finally landed a major promotion at the Austin branch. Director of something important and vague, with a new office and the kind of title that earned you nods in networking mixers. But when she invited me to the celebration, it didn't feel like she was excited to share the moment with me. It felt obligatory, like ticking a box. Still, I went. Wore a decent button-down. Ran a comb through my hair. Even skipped my usual sarcasm when we parked and she said, "Please don't be weird tonight. I brought a gift. Something small, thoughtful. A silver pendant with the initials of our kids, Eli and Maisie, etched into the back. I had it custom made from a local silversmith downtown. Elegant and subtle. Lauren always said she hated flashy jewelry, so I figured this was a quiet way to say I see you. I know what matters." She didn't open it right away. We just walked into the rented hall. One of those co-working spaces that pretend to be hip with exposed ductwork and overpriced finger food. She was whisked away the moment we stepped through the door, hugged by one colleague, then another. Most of the crowd looked like extras from a Netflix startup show. A lot of pastel blazers and ironic sneakers. I hovered near the drinks table, nodding politely to people who didn't recognize me, watching her from a distance. When she finally made her way back to me, I handed her the tiny box. "What's this?" she asked, distracted, her eyes still scanning the room behind me. "It's just something I thought you'd like," I said. She peeled it open while holding a wine glass in the same hand. Already halfway turned toward the woman calling her name from across the room. She paused, looked down at the pendant, then laughed. "Andrew," she said, shaking her head and holding it up like it was a souvenir from a gas station. "You went full sentimental dad mode, huh? Look, it's the kids' initials." People laughed. Not meanly, just the way people laugh when they're not sure if they're supposed to, and everyone's had 2 drinks. I stood there, smiling like it didn't sting. Like I hadn't spent the last week trying to think of something personal to give her on a night that was all about her. One of her coworkers, Travis, I remembered him vaguely from a holiday mixer, gave me a nod that might have been sympathetic or maybe just awkward. Lauren never put the necklace on. She left it on the table next to the cupcakes. I told her I was going to grab some air. She nodded without really hearing me. Outside, I leaned against the side of the building and stared out at the parking lot, empty except for a few early arrivals and a food truck no one had noticed yet. I felt like I was standing outside of my own marriage, watching it through a pane of glass. She had smiled more in that room in 20 minutes than she had at home all week. Earlier that morning, I'd found something, by accident. Her laptop had been open when I went to grab her charger. She always left it lying near the coffee machine. A text thread was on screen. I wasn't snooping, not at first, but the name caught my eye. JM. Work. The exchange was short, casual, and completely not innocent. Same hotel. Of course. Room 415 again. I'll be there by 7. Got the same wine too. You're getting good at this winking face. That emoji. That smug little wink. I don't think I'd ever seen her use it with me. I didn't confront her immediately. I told myself I didn't know the full story. Told myself maybe it was some elaborate inside joke. But something cold settled behind my ribs. The same feeling you get when a car slams on the brakes too fast. I didn't want to explode. I wanted clarity, control. So I printed the thread. Just that one screen. Not all the messages. Just enough. I folded it once and slipped it into a plain envelope. That evening, while she laughed and toasted and sparkled in conversations I wasn't part of, I walked back in and slid the envelope next to her designer bag, the one she'd bragged about scoring on sale, even though it still cost more than our grocery bill for a month. I tucked it just beneath a scarf, visible but not too obvious. She didn't notice. Later, in the car, she asked if I was okay. Said I'd been quiet. I said, "Do you want to talk about the messages?" She blinked. "What messages?" "From this morning," I said. "Your laptop, Jay. The hotel." She stared out the window for a second, then scoffed. "Are you serious right now?" "I saw it, Lauren. It was a joke." she said, quickly, too quickly. God, you're being paranoid. Jay and I joke like that all the time. Everyone does. That didn't read like a joke. She turned in her seat. Why were you even looking at my laptop? I wasn't. It was open. She sighed, leaned her head back against the seat. You're being ridiculous. Do you even hear yourself? Do you think I have time to sneak off to hotels? I've been working nonstop. You have time to text him about wine and room numbers. Her jaw tightened. You're insecure. That's the real issue here. And just like that, the conversation was over. She didn't deny it. She didn't explain it. She just moved the blame like it was second nature. As if the real betrayal was me noticing it. I didn't push further. Not then. Something about her tone, cold, practiced, made it clear this wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't an accident. This was a woman who had already decided the truth didn't matter. That night, she showered and went to bed early, claiming exhaustion. I sat in the living room long after the lights were off, the pendant still in my pocket. It caught the streetlight through the window, reflecting faintly. I ran my thumb over the engraving. I used to think that stood for Eli and Maisie. Now I wasn't so sure. After the party, I didn't sleep much. I laid there beside her, eyes open, watching the ceiling fan turn like the second hand on a clock. Lauren's breath was steady, slow. She slept like someone without a single unfinished conversation. Meanwhile, I felt like my life had just been shoved off the edge of a table and was still tumbling in midair. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Asked if we were out of oat milk. Gave me a quick kiss on the cheek and said she had back-to-back meetings. The envelope was gone from her bag. Not a word about it. That was when my mind began to rewind. It's funny how clearly you can see things once the cracks start showing. All those small moments I brushed aside, those inconsistencies I filed under no big deal, came roaring back with sharp edges. Suddenly, they weren't small anymore. They were puzzle pieces I had ignored. Like the spa receipt. 3 months ago, Lauren told me she was meeting a friend for dinner, a woman I'd met once, briefly. That night she came home glowing, said they'd had the best risotto she'd ever eaten. I asked where they went. She paused, then said that new Italian place on 3rd. But the next day, I found a folded receipt in the laundry, a spa, not a restaurant. A place with aromatherapy packages and private soaking tubs. I'd laughed it off. Maybe she stopped by before dinner, I told myself. Maybe she just forgot to mention it. Now it didn't feel funny. It felt staged. And then there were the flights. Lauren had started traveling more recently, short business trips, quick turnarounds. Vegas, Denver, Seattle. I never thought to question them. She worked in logistics. Travel came with the territory. But last week, Eli asked me if Mom was back from Dallas and I said she was in Phoenix. He gave me a confused look. She told me Dallas, he said, matter of fact. That night, I checked our frequent flyer account. Her Phoenix flight wasn't listed. No ticket. No miles. Just nothing. Then there was her phone. A year ago, we had the same password, our anniversary. Just 4 numbers. We didn't make a thing of it. But one afternoon in March, I picked up her phone by mistake when they were side by side on the kitchen counter. She snatched it from me so fast it startled me. Laughed it off. Sorry, reflex, she said. Work stuff. After that, her phone was always face down. Always silent. Always locked. I told myself I was overthinking it. Everyone values privacy. Right? But then there were the calls. She'd pull into the driveway and just sit there. 15, 20 minutes. Talking, laughing sometimes. I used to think she was wrapping up a meeting. But lately, it wasn't just meetings. It was murmurs. Quiet tones. Sometimes no talking at all, just silence. As if she was waiting for something. Or someone. Maisie noticed it first. Why does Mommy stay in the car? She asked one evening while brushing her teeth. I didn't have an answer. It wasn't just the car. It was her disappearing behind closed doors mid-dinner to take this real quick. It was the way she started wearing perfume to run errands. How she started buying new clothes she didn't tell me about. How she got defensive over nothing, edgy in ways that didn't match the conversation. And then there were weekends. Lauren used to love lazy Saturdays. Pancakes, cartoons with the kids, folding laundry together while we bickered about whose turn it was to grocery shop. But that changed. She started booking herself up friend meetups, yoga classes, leadership brunches. She'd leave early and come back late, claiming she got caught up. Once, I saw an Uber drop her off even though she'd taken her car that morning. When I asked about it, she waved it off. I left my car at Lisa's and got a ride back. We had mimosas. No follow-up. No offer to get her car. Just vanished into the bedroom. The pattern was clear. The timeline was damning. And the kids, they weren't blind. Eli had started asking questions. Subtle ones. Why doesn't mommy eat dinner with us anymore? Is mommy mad at you? Can I call mommy if she's working? It hit me hardest one night when Maisie came into our room crying and said she dreamed that mommy forgot us. I hugged her and told her mommy loved her very much. And even as I said it, I wasn't sure if that was still true. Or if the version of Lauren I believed in even existed anymore. It's a terrifying thing, looking at your life and wondering how much of it was real. I thought about how Lauren used to smile when we took the kids to the lake. How she'd grab my hand in the car just because. How she once left notes in my lunch every Friday with dumb puns and a doodle of a frog. Hop, you're having a good day. That was her. That's the woman I married. So where did she go? I tried to find her in the current version, the polished executive, the perfectly curated Instagram posts, the woman who took 20 pictures to choose one filtered photo of her coffee. But the warmth was gone. All that remained was distance. Sophistication without substance. Even her laughter had changed. It used to be loud, unself-conscious. Now it was controlled. Beautiful but hollow. A performance. It's not that I hadn't noticed the distance growing. I just kept hoping it was a phase. Stress. A rough patch. Something we'd move past. I never imagined I'd be trying to figure out which parts of our life she had replaced. And with who. I started making a list. Felt crazy. But I needed it. I needed to see the timeline. I wrote down every trip, every receipt, every suspicious schedule shift. I looked up flight numbers, compared text timestamps to calendar events, pulled GPS logs from our car's app. It was all there, quiet inconsistencies adding up to something loud and undeniable. I didn't know who Jay really was. Not yet. But I knew she had a type, clever, charismatic. She liked people who could talk the air out of a room. I pictured him as the guy from the party, the one with the slick haircut and the silent laugh. Maybe it was him, maybe not. But someone was occupying space that used to be mine. And what hurt the most wasn't just that she might be cheating. It was that she was lying so easily. That she looked me in the eye every day and pretended nothing was wrong. That's what betrayal is. Not the act itself, but the silence that surrounds it. The deliberate omission. The choice to leave someone in the dark while smiling to their face. By the end of the week, I had a binder. Literal pages. Evidence, dates, ****. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it. I wasn't planning revenge. I just wanted truth. Even if it hurt. Because living in the fog was worse. That's when I decided I'd take the kids on a short trip. Just us. Some time to breathe, away from all the noise. I told Lauren we were going kayaking and camping. She barely looked up from her phone. Sounds fun, she said. She didn't ask which lake. Didn't ask when we'd be back. Just went back to typing, smiling faintly. That was when I knew. She'd already checked out. But I wasn't going to let her write the ending. Not alone. We got back a day early from the trip. That was the plan from the start. But I hadn't told Lauren. I needed to see something. Or maybe, deep down, I already knew what I was going to find. The kids were asleep in the back seat, heads resting against their travel pillows, legs tangled in a mess of blankets and snack wrappers. I watched them in the rearview mirror the whole drive home, both of them so peaceful, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface of the life they knew. I hated that this was happening to them, to us, but I told myself it was better to face it now than live in the illusion any longer. We pulled into the driveway just after 10 a.m. on a Sunday. Bright sun, birds chirping, like the universe was mocking me. The house looked the same as always, quiet, still. But something about it felt wrong, off in a way I couldn't quite explain. Except for the car. Parked in front of our garage, half a foot too far from the curb, was a black Audi I didn't recognize. Clean, expensive. Definitely not Lauren's friend's style. And not a rental. I checked the plates. Texas tags. Local. I didn't panic. I didn't even feel surprised. Just numb. I carried the kids inside quietly and laid them down on the couch with a blanket and their stuffed animals. Eli stirred but didn't wake. Maisie clutched her bunny tighter in her sleep. Then I walked back outside. The front door was unlocked. I moved slowly, every step deliberate. I didn't make noise, didn't call out. I wasn't looking for confrontation. I wasn't gonna scream or throw punches. That's not who I am. I just wanted the truth. Clean, cold, obvious. From the entryway, I could already hear it. Faint laughter upstairs. A man's voice. Hers too. She was laughing in that breathy way she only used when she was trying to be cute. I used to love that laugh. Now it made my stomach twist. I didn't go up. I walked straight into the kitchen, opened the drawer, and grabbed the small remote to our home security system. I pulled out my phone and connected to the cloud storage. We'd installed the system 2 years ago after a break-in scare, 3 cameras. One in the living room, one facing the driveway, and one near the stairs with a partial view of the front door. I scrubbed back through the feed to about an hour after we'd left for the trip. Then I found it. There she was, Lauren, opening the front door with a slow, expectant smile. She didn't look surprised to see him. She looked rehearsed, confident, comfortable. The man who stepped in had the kind of presence you only get from someone who's used to being liked. Tall, stylish, late 30s maybe. They didn't talk at first. They just smiled at each other. Then he handed her a bottle of wine, and she held it against her chest like it was a gift from a secret admirer. He leaned in, kissed her cheek. Too familiar, and she let it linger. Then they embraced. Not a quick hello hug. Not a friendly squeeze. They held each other like they were alone in the world. They laughed as they stepped inside. She kicked off her shoes. He followed, holding a bouquet of flowers. Flowers. They disappeared from the camera's view. I sat there watching the screen, the sounds upstairs still drifting faintly through the vents. I knew where they were. I could imagine the scene in my head without needing visuals. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was emotional. Mate. Domestic. She brought him into our home, into the space where our kids played, where our family photos hung, where I cooked dinner every night. I shut the feed and turned off the monitor. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked calmly back to the living room. The kids were still sleeping. I gathered their essentials, clothes, toothbrushes, backpacks. I packed quickly but carefully. I didn't want to wake them. I didn't want to explain anything yet. Not until I had the words. I left her a note. Nothing dramatic. Just a folded piece of paper on the kitchen island. Took the kids. We'll be safe. Don't contact me until I reach out. I signed my name. Just that. No accusations. No demands. She'd know why. Then we left. I buckled the kids into the car and drove away from the house like I was leaving a crime scene. And in a way I was. Not a crime with alarms or police tape, but a crime of trust. Of betrayal. And the scene was still unfolding in that bedroom, under that roof, in a home that no longer felt like mine. We drove south, no destination in mind at first. Just away. Away from the neighborhood where everything looked normal but wasn't. Away from the walls that had watched my marriage dissolve in real time. Eventually, I found a roadside motel near Houston. One of those aging spots with faded signs and keycards that only work after the 3rd try. It wasn't glamorous, but it was clean. And quiet. The kids didn't ask many questions. They thought it was an adventure. Something new. I let them believe that. That night, they fell asleep tangled in cartoon sheets with the TV playing low. I sat in the corner chair, staring at my phone, waiting. But nothing came. No missed calls. No panic. No frantic texts asking where we were. Not even a check-in to see if the kids were okay. That was confirmation all over again. Not just that she had cheated, but that she wasn't even concerned we were gone. That she wasn't rushing to explain, or fight, or beg. She wasn't scrambling to fix it. She was silent. And that silence said more than any message ever could. I kept the security footage. Backed it up. Documented everything. The time they entered. The time they left. License plate. Model of the car. Flowers. Wine. Laughter. I opened the binder I'd started earlier and added a new section, Home Invasion. I knew that sounds dramatic, but it felt right. He'd invaded my space. Not just physically, but emotionally. He walked into the life I built and acted like he belonged. And Lauren, she let him. She welcomed him. And now there was no more doubt, no more denial, no more benefit of the doubt, no more hoping I misunderstood. The truth had arrived, delivered in pixels and timestamps and a hollow house I used to call home. And from that moment on, I knew I would never go back. The motel near Houston had a flickering porch light, a soda machine from the early 2000s, and beds that squeaked every time you shifted. But it was safe. That's all I needed. The kids were asleep within an hour of checking in, their exhaustion outpacing their curiosity. Eli curled up with his Switch still clutched in one hand. Maisie wrapped herself around a pillow and a stuffed giraffe with one eye missing. I turned off the lights and sat in the creaky chair by the window watching cars pass on the highway like they had somewhere urgent to be, somewhere I wasn't. I stared at my phone and waited, but nothing came. Not a text, not a missed call, not even a half-hearted "Where are you?" from Lauren. The screen stayed blank. It shouldn't have surprised me, but it still did. I had taken the kids, disappeared from our home, left behind a note that should have at least triggered a response. But the silence was deafening. Maybe she was too busy. Or maybe she'd already rewritten the story in her head, the version where I was being dramatic or irrational or controlling. Maybe she was still lying in that bed with that man, sipping the wine he brought, laughing at some joke I would never hear. Whatever it was, I wasn't on her radar. Not me. Not Eli. Not Maisie. And that silence, that was what hurt most. So I documented. If I couldn't sleep, I could at least get to work. I opened my laptop, connected to my mobile hotspot, and started organizing. I created folders. Dated everything. Screenshot *TS from her texts with JM. The video stills from the security camera. The timestamps. The GPS log from her car, which I pulled from our shared account. She'd gone to that house on business weekends, but the log said otherwise. Multiple trips that never left the city. Places she never told me about. Then I found something new. I logged into our shared calendar. Nothing unusual. A few color-coded meetings, some school events, reminders to pick up dry cleaning. But on her personal calendar, which synced once to our family laptop months ago and apparently never signed out, I saw entries she had hidden. Some were labeled strategy session or coaching call, but they were always on the same days as the fake trips. And each had a 3-hour block listed as travel time. They were careful, timed with just enough gap between entries to imply a trip. It was a script. A pattern. Except she hadn't left the city. The GPS data proved that. Her car stayed in town, parked in unfamiliar neighborhoods, hotel garages, or not moving for hours near a place that wasn't our house. Sometimes there were photos she posted from out of town, old pictures, I realized. Recycled. Filtered to match the lie. Even worse, she tagged those photos with things like #growth or #reset, as if infidelity was just another phase of self-discovery. There was a post from 2 weeks ago, a filtered selfie in a hotel bathroom, glass of wine beside her. The caption read, "Sometimes to love others well, you have to love yourself first." That's what she told the world. Meanwhile, Maisie had asked where Mommy was. Again. And I had said work even though I knew better. I documented it all. Every inconsistency. Every receipt. Every contradiction between her words and the digital trail she didn't realize she'd left behind. I wasn't planning to *P***nize it, not yet. But I needed the truth somewhere I could see it. Something to hold onto when the gaslighting tried to creep in. When my brain wanted to believe this was salvageable. Because it wasn't. The realization settled into me like a weight. I hadn't just lost a partner. I'd lost a version of my life that felt real. I'd lost the right to believe in what we had. Because now every memory came with a footnote. A shadow. A question mark. Was she texting him during our vacation? Was she seeing him on the nights she said she was at networking events? Did she ever really leave that hotel room, or had she just made a second life out of it? I stood up and walked to the mirror. I looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 days. The kind of tired that sleep can't fix. My shirt was wrinkled, my eyes bloodshot *T, and the knot in my chest hadn't let up since I'd opened that laptop back home. I tried not to cry. It wasn't about pride. I just didn't want the kids to wake up and see me falling apart. Instead, I whispered, "We're okay." Not to them. To myself. Because I needed to hear it out loud. The next morning came slowly. The motel smelled like artificial lemon and cigarettes, but the kids woke up laughing. They made a game out of the vending machine, begged for chips and root beer. I let them have both. Why not? Their lives were changing and I needed to buy a little piece wherever I could find it. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. I even refreshed my email. No new messages. No missed calls. No sudden apology. No, I'm worried about the kids. Nothing. And that's when I knew. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had detached. Emotionally, mentally, she had already left the marriage. Maybe months ago. Maybe even before the hotel meetups. Her absence wasn't just physical. It was total. Like someone had flipped a switch and decided the old life wasn't worth returning to. She wasn't fighting to keep us. Not the marriage. Not the family. She was just gone. That afternoon I called my brother, told him where we were. I didn't want to be alone anymore. He didn't ask questions. Just said, come by. I told him not yet. I needed another day to think. To get grounded. But it meant something knowing someone still cared enough to show up. By dinner, I was back in the motel chair, typing notes on my phone. Evidence of abandonment. Emotional neglect. Timeline of lies. Potential names of the man pulled from tagged photos and office rosters. It was all starting to make sense. And still, not a single message from her. Maisie drew pictures on motel notepads. Eli beat a level in his game and shouted yes, loud enough to make the guy next door thump the wall. I laughed. It felt strange. Real. Because for the first time in weeks, there was no pretending. No smiling through a dinner while wondering who she was texting. No watching her laugh at a joke I hadn't heard. Just me. And the kids. And silence. And you know what? It was honest. 2 days passed at the motel without a word from her. I didn't expect much anymore, maybe a line about the kids, maybe a half-hearted excuse wrapped in corporate lingo. Sorry, things have been hectic. That sort of thing. But she didn't even pretend to check in. That silence gave me room to think, to feel the full shape of what had happened. And then, just as suddenly, she showed up. It was late afternoon, the Texas sun low enough to paint the sky in orange streaks. The motel parking lot was nearly empty, save for an old couple unloading a cooler and a teenager slouched over a bike. I'd just gotten the kids down for a nap after a long walk and some greasy drive-through lunch. I stepped out to stretch, holding a paper cup of stale coffee when I saw her. Lauren. Standing beside the vending machines. She looked out of place, like she'd been dropped there by accident. Still in heels, still dressed for a casual but curated image, a crisp blouse, jeans, and a slouchy leather bag that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. In one hand, she held a plastic sack with juice boxes and coloring books, as if that alone proved she was a mother. She didn't see me at first. She scanned the parking lot slowly, the way you do when you're expecting an audience. Not searching, performing. She adjusted her hair, took a breath, and then spotted me. Andrew, she said, like my name was a surprise. I didn't move. She walked toward me, slower than necessary, like every step was calculated. When she got close, she glanced at the door behind me. Are the kids inside? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. They're asleep, I said. She looked disappointed. Or maybe just annoyed. Can I see them when they wake up? I didn't answer. Instead, I stood between her and the door, blocking her view. That was all it took to shift her tone. I came to talk, she said, tilting her head like this was some kind of olive branch. Talk about what? Her smile faltered. About everything, she replied. About us. I didn't respond. I waited. I wanted to see what she'd say without prompting. Whether she'd mention the hotel, the messages, the car, the silence. Instead, she took a deep breath, looked around the parking lot, and then started in. This whole thing, you leaving, it's complicated, she said. We should have discussed it before you just disappeared. Disappeared? You left with the kids, she said, sharper now. You scared me. No, I didn't, I said. You weren't scared. You didn't call. You didn't even text. She flinched just slightly. I needed time to process, she replied. I thought maybe you were trying to send a message. I nodded. And did you get it? She hesitated. Look, Andrew, I don't think this is helping. I didn't come here to fight. I folded my arms. Then why are you here? She looked down at the bag in her hand, the juice boxes and books like they were her credentials. I wanted to see my children, she said finally. And I wanted to show you I'm trying. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Trying? Her jaw tightened. Don't do that. You show up here with juice boxes and a pity expression and I'm supposed to believe that's effort? She took a step forward, lowering her voice. I'm trying to keep this from getting ugly. For everyone. Especially the kids. And there it was. The shift. The edge beneath the concern. Not for our children, for appearances. For the narrative she could control. You didn't come here for the kids, I said. You came here to be seen trying. She blinked. That landed. You think I care what people think? I think you care more about the story than the truth. She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Instead, she adjusted her posture, forced a smile. We should be adults about this, she said. Agreed, I replied. So be honest. Are you still seeing him? Silence. She didn't answer. She looked past me at the motel door at the heat shimmering off the pavement. I'm not doing this here, she said. Where would you prefer? I asked. A nicer venue? She turned like she might walk away, but then paused. I just want to figure out how we move forward, she said. I stared at her, the woman I had once built my life around. The woman who now stood in a parking lot like an actress waiting for a better cue. Forward starts with truth, I said. Her eyes finally met mine. And in them I saw something strange, not guilt, not sadness, not even shame. Just calculation. Like she was scanning for the next best move. We can talk again later, she said. When emotions aren't so high. Bring a lawyer next time, I said quietly. She didn't react. She just nodded, handed me the bag, the juice, the coloring books, like that settled something. Then she turned and walked back across the lot, heels clicking like punctuation marks. She didn't look back. Not once. I stood there until her car, the one I paid for, pulled away. Then I went back inside. The kids were still asleep. I placed the bag by the nightstand, sat on the edge of the bed, and watched them breathe. They looked peaceful. Safe. The one thing I could still give them. It hit me then how deeply alone I'd been in that marriage for a long time. Not just the last few months. Not just since the hotel. It had been a slow erosion. A quiet disappearing act. One she played so well I almost didn't notice it was happening. She didn't ask how the kids were doing. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. What she did was show up with props. Like a stage actress. Hoping the audience would believe it meant something. But there was no audience here. Just me. And two kids who deserved better than a performance. 3 days after Lauren's parking lot performance, a social worker knocked on the motel room door. She had a clipboard, a polite smile, and a tone that said, "Let's get this over with." Lauren had filed a wellness concern. The woman asked if she could come in. I said yes. The kids were watching a nature documentary, still in their pajamas. I showed her the packed school folders, the food receipts, the calendar of their remote classes. She nodded, asked a few questions, and 15 minutes later, she left with a quiet, "Seems like you're doing everything right." I knew what it was, not concern, not fear. Strategy. Lauren wasn't coming to make peace. She was preparing a narrative. I was unstable. Rash. Emotionally volatile. She was the grounded one, the misunderstood one. That night, I checked her Instagram. She'd posted a filtered photo of our old living room, her favorite reading chair, a candle flickering on the coffee table. The caption, "Healing is not linear. Sometimes you need stillness to find yourself again." The comments flooded in. "You're so strong. You're glowing. Proud of you." No one asked where her kids were. No one knew what had happened. And she didn't correct them. She wasn't just rewriting the past. She was editing me out entirely. I found a small house in Iowa, plain, quiet, with a fenced yard and a view of a pond that caught the light in the evenings. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't meant to impress anyone. It was just safe. The kids adjusted quickly. They made friends within days. The school was small, the teachers warm. At night, I'd read to them on the porch. Sometimes we just sat and watched the wind move through the trees. I filed for full custody. Lauren didn't fight it. She replied to my email with a single line, "I may not be the mother they need right now." That was it. No ceremony. No plea. Just quiet detachment, like she was handing back a coat she didn't want to wear anymore. The first weekend after it was finalized, I took the kids to the lake. We skipped stones, chased each other barefoot across the grass, and lay on the dock watching clouds float by. It wasn't a grand moment. It didn't need to be. It was quiet. Warm. Real. For the first time in a long time, the silence around us didn't feel like something was missing. It felt like peace.